welcome back to Tale 3 Cabins. I'm up here in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I hope this was an okay idea to be out here to try to make a video. Hopefully the wind is not too much for the microphone. I had hinted earlier that we were thinking about getting rid of our travel trailer, and what we're on now is basically its final farewell tour. We decided to take a little trip. We could not take a very extended one because we had some commitments at the end of September, but we decided we'd take 2 weeks and come up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And I just want to share you some of the things that we've learned up here. And if you're thinking about doing it yourself, especially with an RV, maybe some of these things will help you out. So we left our home in Northern Ohio, and our first stop was over by Sandusky, where the islands are for Lake Erie. Cedar Point is very popular around there, but we have some friends that live around there. We decided to mooch dock with them for an evening on our way up to Michigan, taking our time to get to where we need to be up here in the Upper Peninsula. But that was our first stop. Next day we traveled on, went into Michigan, and we stopped over by Bay City, which is close to Saginaw. We stayed there for 2 nights, looked around, and checked out some of the sites over there. Then we started moving our way up north, up into the Upper Peninsula. We went up to the mighty Mackinac Bridge to cross over from one peninsula to the other. Normally to go on the Mackinac Bridge, it's $4 per vehicle. With our trailer, it was a total of $8. I'm not sure if they count axles or how they work it. $8 for us to get up here. They only accepted cash. Easy Pass did not work. They do not accept Easy Pass or other forms of payment when it comes to going over the Mackinac Bridge. And you'll have to pay some form of either cash or credit to come across to the Upper Peninsula. Now, once you get over to this Upper Peninsula, there's a few things to keep in mind. I will tell you the eastern portion of the Upper Peninsula is pretty rural. It's pretty much wilderness. You don't have a lot of small towns. You don't have a lot of gas stations, no grocery stores. You might find a little general store here and there or part of a gas station. But once you cross over the bridge, make sure you have enough gas, especially if you're towing a trailer, because that cuts in your gas mileage. But you might want to top off once you cross over the bridge and get a local gas station nearby there. The price will be a little bit lower. Gas stations will be very scarce once you start heading more north. So our next stop took us to Muskellunge State Park. And we've been primarily staying in all state parks throughout Michigan, and they're pretty much carbon copies of one another, other than they're in different areas. But they come with the same type of fire pit. They both had the same picnic tables, and none of them really have full hookups that I noticed. Everything was either primitive or electric. If you get electric, most of them were 30 amps and not 50 amps. Where we're staying now has a 30 amp connection only. Each state park does have a dump station, so the way we've been working it now is once we get there, we top off with water. We fill up our water tank. For instance, in Muskellunge State Park, we're going to stay there 3 days. So we topped off our water tank. We checked out some of the sites in that area. We were on the shore of Lake Superior. Lake Superior was just about a quarter-mile walk through the woods. And then we went to Whitefish Bay. We went over to Whitefish Point, where they have the Shipwreck Museum. That was pretty neat to check out if you're reminiscent of the Edmund Fitzgerald, the Gordon Lightfoot song. There's many shipwrecks that take place in that area by Whitefish Bay and Whitefish Point. I think if I were a boater, I would probably stay away from that area. But it was very interesting. It was worth the $15 to get in. It was $15 for Karen and $15 for me. No type of discounts or anything like that. You basically get to view the museum, which has some nice artifacts, talks about the history of the shipwrecks in that area, have little maps of where they took place. They do have the bell for the Edmund Fitzgerald in there. They did have a nice ceremony back in 1995, 20 years after the Edmund Fitzgerald sank. In 95, they had an expedition go down and take the bell off of the Edmund Fitzgerald, bring it up, had a ceremony, then they brought down another bell, which is basically a memorial to all the sailors that lost their lives on that ship. Pretty neat to see. There's another room you can go to that will show you a movie, so it has a small documentary on the Edmund Fitzgerald itself. There is a lighthouse there also on the premises. You can view how lightkeepers lived and raised their family in such a remote area at the time. Then they had a nice view of Lake Superior out there, a nice little walkway. So all in all, worth the drive. Another thing I will say is that before coming out here, Karen had mentioned to me that you could see these Yooperlights, and that's the nickname up here for them. I believe they're called soda light, but they nicknamed them Yooperlights, and they're basically stones that you might find on the shoreline, especially up around Lake Superior, that if you hold a UV light to them or like a black light up to them, they kind of glow like they're lava. They give you a nice eerie orange glow, and it's a pretty popular thing to do around here to try to go Yooperlight hunting. You need your flashlight, of course, and we did pick one up. If you're going to be coming out here, I would suggest pick one up at Amazon before you leave, because you could probably get them for somewhere around $10. If you want a nice bigger one that shines a more powerful beam that will shoot farther away and give you a larger area, you're probably going to be looking at $30 or $40. But if you're going to try to buy it locally, you're going to spend $25 for a small light and maybe around $100 for the larger one that I mentioned. I personally didn't think there would be that much of attraction for it. My wife brought it up a couple times, and I almost thought it was more of like a publicity type hoax thing, just to get people to, come up here and look for these things, but never actually find them. And Karen and I went out one evening with our little light, not far away from the campground, and we ended up finding 3 there. So it was kind of neat. Once you find one, you're kind of hooked, because then you keep looking for another one, and then hopefully you can find a little bit bigger one. So now just about every evening, if we're near the water, we come out here once it starts getting dark. We take our little UV light and we just kind of scan the area and see if we could find any of these Yooperlights. So it is kind of a neat thing to do. Get you out of the camper and you can enjoy a little shoreline and the water when the sun's going down, and then just after dusk. It seems like it's pretty popular. Every time we've gone out on a beach somewhere or a rocky beach, that we always see other people there with their UV lights looking on the ground and looking for these rocks. It's a little bit of a competition. We did luck out because when we arrived at the Muskellunge State Park, there was a pretty good windstorm just before we got there. In fact, it was kind of buffeting our trailer around coming up here, and that kicked up the waves a lot, so that kind of dumped a fresh load of rocks on the shoreline for us, and maybe that's why we were lucky enough to find 3 of them. So traveling up here in the Upper Peninsula, most roads are dirt or gravel. If you're going to use a car GPS, I advise against it, because if you're going to go from point A to point B, it's going to take you through some pretty wild back roads, and if you're towing a trailer, you don't want that. Google Maps and Apple Maps seem to do fine to take you on a main route. One thing when you are traveling around here, because there aren't a lot of paved roads, you have to go way out of your way. So if you're going to go see an attraction or try to visit a scenic area, and as the crow flies, maybe it's only about 15 miles away, but you might end up driving 60 miles around to get to it because you got to stay on those main roads. So just be leery of that. Most of the roads up here are just 2 lanes. They're up to around highway speed, so about 55 to 60 miles per hour is the speed limit. If you get caught behind a large truck that's delivering stone or something along that nature that travels a little bit slower, it's usually about 3 or 4 miles before they have another passing lane come up where you can pass the slower traffic, but then you're back down to 2 lanes. So that's pretty much the whole way of travel since we've been up here. As I mentioned, on the east side, things are very scarce when it comes to stores, supplies, gasoline. But as you start traveling west on the peninsula, things start to get a little bit more populated. You actually start going through little tiny towns. You get another 10 or 20 miles, you go through another tiny town, and then you get to some of the larger towns like Marquette and Munson, where you do have some decent gas stations that will be able to fit you and your trailer. There will be some grocery stores, even some fast food restaurants if you're interested in that. So the western part of the peninsula is a little bit better off when it comes to stocking things up from a store or a gas station or grocery store. So we left Muskellunge State Park. Now we headed west, and we're now here at the most northern part of Michigan, which is by Copper Harbor. Again, there's just 2-lane roads and then just a lot of dirt roads. There are some scenic areas to go visit around here. The beaches are rocky. I wouldn't call them like sandy layout type beaches. You will see freighters out going by. I was hoping to maybe see the northern lights. There was a chance of seeing them last night. I took a few photos. I came out here with my camera, and I don't know if I actually caught a little bit of it or if it is light somewhere across in Canada that is coming from the cities or not. It seemed to vary in intensity, which normally city lights stay the same. I might have caught it, but it was very faint. Spent a couple hours out here last night and it was pretty much a waste. They are saying that there is a possibility of the northern lights being out again tomorrow night. We're going to be leaving the next morning, so I'm going to come out here and give it a try. Hopefully, cross our fingers, we'll see them. Okay, it is the next night. There is a group of people out here, and they gave up at about 11:30, and I hung out for a little while. And shortly after midnight, you can start seeing the auroras appear. Unfortunately, there's a lot of wildfire smoke that's coming over from Canada that's obscuring just how intense these lights would have been. But nevertheless, I did get a few good shots. I did do a video early in the year, if you're interested, that does talk about how to see the auroras in the northern latitudes or up in Michigan. Well, we've been hanging out here in Copper Harbor. We're going to be here for another couple days. We're at Fort Wilkinson State Park, and there is an actual fort there that you can visit as part of the park admission. So a little thing about the state parks again when you make reservations. If you're a Michigan resident, you usually have first dibs when it comes to timing. So they usually open up a calendar for next year a month ahead of time compared to a non-resident. If you're a non-resident, the calendar gets opened up a month behind, and then you can start making reservations. Another thing you need if you're going to be spending a lot of time up here is basically it's a recreation pass. It's a Michigan State Recreation Area Pass, and it's good for all the recreation areas in the state of Michigan. If you're just coming up here for one day, it's about $10 or $11. But if you want to buy a pass that lasts for the year, and it's a little sticker that goes on your windshield, that is $40. Basically, everywhere we go these last 2 weeks, we're pretty much staying in a state park and we're visiting some sort of recreation area. So we opted for the $40 pass, which is good for, again, the whole year. Traveled into Copper Harbor and viewed some of the scenic sites. There's a nice scenic vista on top of what they call Broad Rock Mountain, which gives you a nice view of Lake Superior, and then it's a valley below, and then some of the other inland lakes you can see from up there too, which is very beautiful. Again, we're traveling and there's a haze in the air. I don't know if you can see it, but smoke from Canadian wildfires has been blown over. It varies in intensity, but you can definitely see the haze from it here. Typically today would be a nice clear blue sky, but we've got a touch of gray in there, and hopefully it doesn't impact things if we do see the auroras later on tomorrow evening. The skies have been very beautiful up here, very starry. The parks have been dark, seeing a lot of satellites going by. So there are some dark parks around here. If you come out here to do some star watching, I would recommend you get a headlamp that has a red LED light on it for just walking, and it saves your vision. You don't have that bright light and your eyes have to adjust every time you turn that light on. It's also good etiquette to not be shining a bright light around, especially if other people are out here viewing the stars. Our next stop is going to be Wilderness Campground, which is just west of Mackinac, and there is a dark star park over there. So we'll have one more chance of seeing the northern lights over there if nothing happens here while we're productive. Our best chance of seeing them and to see them most brilliantly is here though, because we really can't get much further north right now than to just hop in the lake and go to Canada. Now I would imagine the winters are pretty scarce around here. Their record snowfall for 1 year totaled over 390 inches. I would imagine that's why snowmobiling is so popular up here in the winter season. There is a beautiful state park here that has some nice waterfalls called Toscawana State Park. They have a view area of the upper and the lower falls. And I had mentioned earlier about all the dirt roads for travel around here, which makes it great if you have a UTV or an ATV. We noticed these vehicles were pretty prevalent in just about every campground we stayed at up here. We took a 90-minute ride over to Pictured Rock, and there is an entrance fee because it is a national park, and we only had about 2 hours to spare to visit this. We ended up not going because we found we wanted to dedicate at least 1 or 2 days to this area, so we're going to come back on a future trip. We moved back down to the lower part of Michigan, and we're right by Mackinac, over here by Wilderness State Park. It's just west of the Mackinac Bridge. All the state parks have been great so far. We have no complaints. We've enjoyed staying at every one. Our friends from Sandusky are going to join us for the last few days of our final farewell tour. They're meeting us up here at Wilderness State Park, and they'll hang out with us for another stop down by Traverse City.
You guys have that look by the door, like as soon as she gets in, you're going to go.
Get over here.
Come on,
Go, get over here.
She's coming.
She's got one step. Come on, Willow, hurry up. Get up. Act like you're doing something.
There she is. Yay.
Good girl. All right, everybody run. Oh, he's kidding. He's kidding.
Good girl.
It's our last night, and forecast is calling for auroras, and we might be able to see them down in Traverse City where we are right now. It started out kind of slow. You could see the auroras in the background there just starting to form. They kind of hung out way in the back for a little bit, and then it took about a good 2.5 hours before they exploded sometime around midnight. Northern Lights come out here quite often. I've mentioned this earlier in an earlier video. If you want to try to see the Northern Lights, a good place to come up here is Michigan. It's always a crapshoot no matter what, no matter where you are. The numbers could look good. Their forecasts could say we're going to see Northern Lights down to Tennessee or down to the mid-Atlantic state, and a lot of times it turns out to be a bust. As you go north, your chances are better. So all in all, it's been a good trip. As I mentioned, this is our travel trailer's final farewell tour. Once we get back in another week, we're going to clean it out, and we've already purchased another camper. I'll go over that with you guys once we pick it up. I'll go over some of the reasons we traded it in for and some of the things we're going to lose. We had a chance to go look at the new one just before we came out here. More and more I find some things that I'm going to miss that our current trailer has. So it's going to be an adjustment period for us. Hopefully in the long run, once we start adding our own personal touches in there, making a few modifications, that it will suit us as nicely as this one did, and we'll get a better night's sleep on top of it. That's going to do it for today. I appreciate everybody watching. Hope you enjoy and subscribe to these videos. Click on that little bell when you want to know when a new one is coming out, and keep an eye on us. Take care, everybody.